Hi, I'm Matt, and on today's Matt's World DIY, I'm making these delicious fall pumpkin scones. So let's get to it. So the first thing you're going to do in this recipe is get your oven set to 400 degrees. You want to get that nice and hot. And then we're going to take 1/2 cup or 1 stick of ice cold butter, and we're going to chop and cube that up. Now, what you want in this recipe, as opposed to other recipes that we're making, is everything's going to be super duper cold. Cold, cold, cold is the key. So let's start by cutting our butter in half. Then we're going to halve those halves. And again, after we get this butter cubed up, we're going to stick it into the freezer for a little while and get it even more cold. Then we're going to want to take and cube this butter. And like I said before, everything in this recipe is going to be super cold. It's going to kind of go against everything we've talked about recently about don't add cold ingredients to your warm ingredients and then stick that in the oven. Well, this isn't a cake. So we have little different rules that we're going to play by today. Okay, I'm going to take this and put it into the freezer for about 20 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, just to get it really super cold. I'll be back. So while my butter is in the freezer, I'm going to get started working on the dry ingredients. So I've got my handy scale out and I put my bowl on, zeroed it out. So the first thing we're going to add is our flour. You're going to need 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour or 270 grams. There you go, 270 grams. 1/4 cup of granulated sugar or 50 grams. So zero that out. 50 grams of granulated sugar. So these are not super duper sweet, but they are super duper tasty. There we go, perfect, 50 grams of sugar. Zero that out. Finished with these dry ingredients, and I'm also finished with my scale. I'm also going to need 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder. This is going to help serve as leavener to help these babies rise a little bit. 1 1/2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. So here's my half. Now you can make your own pumpkin spice if you'd like, which I think is a great idea. I think I'm going to do that at some point because sometimes you can customize your own flavors. If you like more, let's say nutmeg, or if you like cardamom in it, you can add that into it as well. I'm going to need 1 1/2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. You know, I love cinnamon. I love ground cinnamon. So even if you put a little bit more, that's okay, but just be careful, don't go overboard with that. 1/2 teaspoon of salt. This is fine salt, so I'm adding just a little less. The final dry ingredient we're going to put in is 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Put this in to help it rise. After those ingredients are in the bowl, just go ahead and whisk that around. You want to well incorporate all of these dry ingredients. Get them all nice and mixed up. And I'm telling you right now, it smells like fall in a bowl. This is going to be delicious. I can't wait. Now that we have our dry ingredients combined, let's set this aside and pull up another bowl, and we'll get our wet ingredients started. I'm going to start with a 1/2 cup of pumpkin puree. You want to also add a 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar, 1/2 cup of heavy cream. This is going to make it super rich and nice and delicious. I'm going to get every drop out of there. And you're going to also have 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. Here's one. And here is 1/2. And probably a little more. I'm always going extra with the vanilla. I love this vanilla. Last thing we're going to put, don't forget, you have to put an egg in. So let's get your egg in. After these are in there, let's go ahead and combine that, whisk that all together. Nice and well combined, and then we'll add our dry ingredients, and you're gonna be amazed at how easily and quickly this recipe comes together. All right, now that I have my beautiful pumpkin mixture all mixed up, well combined, and it looks really, really nice, I'm going to set this aside, and now it's time to get my butter that has been chilling in the freezer. I'm going to pull my dry ingredients back over here to the side and just drop all of this awesome cold butter into my flour mixture. And I tell you ahead of time, I just washed my hands. They're nice and clean. These are the best tools. If you don't want to get your hands into the mix, you can also use a pastry cutter or fork and knife, that type of thing, and get this butter incorporated. So you want to toss your butter into your dry ingredients, and then you're just going to manipulate the butter. You want to squeeze the butter pieces so that you get these nice pockets of butter that are going to be layered into your mix. And you want to get them down to about pea size, but whenever the butter is in your mix and it's in the oven and it's heating up and baking, these butter pockets, I'm going to call it, that are in your dough are going to create these voids in your scone, and that creates those nice it creates the nice flakiness for your product, your end product, your scone. It's going to be so delicious. And by the way, this is very much like the Starbucks recipe for making their scones. So if you like Starbucks scones, you give this recipe a try. Go ahead and try this one on your own. Now this is coming along great. You see how easy I'm just lifting and squeezing and trying to squeeze dry mixture into these butter chunks. And you're going to get this about a pea-sized consistency. If there's some that are a little bit larger, it's fine. But this looks really perfect. Now that I've got my dry ingredients all combined and the butter is well incorporated in there, I'm going to take and add my wet ingredients with the pumpkin. All you have to do is just pour it in. You just pour it all in at one time. And when we combine this, we're just going to do it until combined. Don't get aggressive with your combining, okay? Because if you do that, you're going to activate the gluten. We don't want the gluten to be activated in the flour, because then your scones are not going to rise up properly. They may end up being tough and dense, and if you like a dense scone, I guess that's good. But you just want to get all of the flour streaks out and all of the wet well incorporated. A dough mat is a really good way to get your dough shaped exactly to the right proportions and then cut, and so you have the absolute perfect scone. So you want to make sure, first of all, you're working with a very well floured surface. And so I'm flouring this up really well, and also going to flour up my hands. But before I do that, I got to get this dough onto the mat. So let's do this. It's funny. It's called, anytime I have something like, there's like a doormat or a dough mat or something that has the word mat in it, I just remember my students always like, oh, Matt, it's like you said your name. It's like, yeah, I said my name. It was funny, right? So silly. Anyway, I'm going to flour up my hands before I start touching this. Again, my super clean hands. And I want to make sure that I get all of this onto my dough mat before I start working. And flour up my hands really well. and get some on the dough. And then look, this is really so easy. Should not be intimidated about making dough of any kind, anything that you have to, let's say if it's a pie dough or bread dough, don't be nervous about it. Just, you know, sometimes you just got to venture out into that territory you've never been to before. And that's where growth happens, right? Well, I actually have markings on my dough mat that tell me how big this is getting. And I want to make it into a square, 8 inches. Put a little bit more here. 8 inches is out here and there. And this in. And I'm also going to put a little flour on my bench scraper. Use this as a great, easy way to lift my dough so that I know it's not sticking on the bottom. Let's see if we can do this. Whoa. That's great. I'm gonna pull some of that residue off of there. Spread some more flour on the bottom. I'll put this back down on the other side. Now that my 8-inch square is done, I'm going to cut this into quarters. Now, when you're cutting this, don't cut and saw like that, because when you do that, you're messing up the edges. What you want to do is just cut straight down. Boom, just like that. There we go. And then cut it this way and this way. Now I've got my 4 quarters. My 4 quarters are cut. I want to go ahead and half these quarters into triangles. So just like that. These are making the shape of my scones now. 2, 3, and 4. My dough now is all prepared and ready to go onto my baking sheet. So what you want to do is lift these very carefully. They are not super strong, they're not super firm right now, so whenever you're handling them, handle with the utmost care. And then just transfer them onto your baking sheet. And after they go on the baking sheet, I'm going to put them in the freezer for about 20 minutes or so, just for them to really set up nice and well. And then they're going to go into the oven. My scones are on the mat, and what I'm going to do, put these into the freezer for about 20 minutes. When they come out, brush them with a little cream, and then they're going to go into the oven. Once the scones come out of the freezer, brush them lightly with some of the heavy cream, and then they're ready to go into the oven. Now that my scones have been brushed with some of the heavy cream, they're ready to go into the 400-degree, nice and toasty oven. They're going to go in for about 20 minutes. If you want a crisper scone, go for about 25 minutes. While my scones are cooling on the rack, I'm going to make my icing for the top. This is really easy to do. All you have to have is about 1.5 cups of powdered sugar and about 2 tablespoons of milk. Now that I have my 2 tablespoons of milk in, I'm just going to go ahead and stir. You could use a whisk, you could use a spoon. I'm just going to use a spoon because I've already done my dishes and I've put my whisk away, and this is what I had to scoop out my sugar with, so I just find it easier to hold it in my hand. Now another option for you, if you want to do this like Starbucks does it, then you would take this white icing and you would smooth it over the top, and then there's a pumpkin spice drizzle that you would put over it, and I'll show you how to make that as well. All right, to make the pumpkin spice drizzle, I've put a tablespoon of pumpkin puree and 1/4 teaspoon of pumpkin spice in a bowl. I'm going to add to that some of my white drizzle and mix that up. And you can do a variety of things. Like I said, if you just want to do like a cinnamon version of this, of the white, you could do that, or if you just do the plain white. But the glaze, drizzle, icing, whatever you want to call it, it really helps bring things to the top. After the scones have come out of the oven and cooled for about 10 minutes, take and pour some of the icing using the back of your spoon and spread the icing over the tops of each one of the scones. After that, I I did a drizzle of the pumpkin puree and pumpkin spice frosting over each one of them. Came out pretty good. Now it's time for a taste test. I think my eyes tell the whole story. It's pretty darn good. This scone is amazing. It's light, it's buttery, the pumpkin flavor with all the spices really come through, and the sugary glaze on the top really makes the flavors pop. It tastes like fall, people. It tastes like fall. It's delicious. I'm going to be making some more of these for some of my friends, and I hope you get a chance to make this recipe as well. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, like it, subscribe to my channel, and in the meantime, check out my check out my baking playlist. I've got a lot more videos coming. See you next time.